Okay, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel, and I guess now we are on our another interview. Maybe you can introduce yourself to me.
Yeah, I'm Steve. Currently, I'm a full-time paralympic for Team Singapore.
Mm.
Yep. And right now, training up for the postponed Tokyo Paralympic. I train 6 times a week. Some days I train 2 times a day.
Whoa.
So, yeah, that's the lifestyle of a full-time athlete right now.
Okay, so maybe you can tell me more about your visual impairment.
So right now, what I can see is generally called light perception. I can see movement, things moving around me, and some contrast. Yeah, so it has been deteriorated over the years. Long story short, back in 2004, after my national service, I was diagnosed with this eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So it started off with night blindness. That means I can't see well at night and dim places. And my visual field has narrowed down to a tunnel. And over time, my sight will get narrower and blurrier. And eventually leading to total or near total blindness. And the doctor told me that there's no cure or treatment for this condition yet. So imagine a young teenager in his early 20s with high hopes and dreams suddenly being told by this misfortune. I feel so depressed and dejected back then. So I started to isolate myself and I doesn't want to do anything. Back then I was wondering, why me? One day I was awakened by the sound of thunder and I felt so hungry then. I realized I had not eaten for the whole day. And I went to the kitchen to look for food. There isn't any. No one was around home at that moment. Because of my hunger, I decided to grab my umbrella to go and get my food. As it was raining heavily outside. So along the way, I happened to trip and fell onto the slippery hard concrete ground. And it was painful. And before I knew it, blood was dripping down from my knee to my shin area. So I grit my teeth, continue to buy my food. So after successfully bought my food, that's where I realized something. If you're hungry, you'll find a way to get your food. If you're hungry, you can find ways to overcome your adversities. So that's a turning point where I decided to be hungry again. And I start to focus on solutions. And later on, I decided to further my studies. And my journey continued from there. Back then, I tried to apply for a job after I graduated. But back then, the job market is hard hit or hit hard by a financial crisis. So the 2008 financial crisis is one of the worst economic disasters since the Great Depression of 1929. If you can recall the fall of Lehman Brothers, so banks and financial firms are facing financial difficulties. So fresh graduates find it tough to find a job. Fresh graduates with visual impairment like me find it even tougher. I sent out 20 open resumes. I went for a job interview. All the employers that I have this eye condition, and they started to question me. Steve, are you sure you're finding the right job? Steve, are you sure you can do this job? And I was feeling very depressed and dejected because all my fellow friends in my university, they are either started working or they have already found a job. So that was one of the hardest time for me in my life.
Will you think that their concerns were valid, or they just didn't understand what you could do in general?
I believe that back then the awareness of what a visually impaired person can do or cannot do is not so widely spread across the employer side in Singapore. I guess they need to see what we can do, and we have to show them what we can do.
Like really like
Correct.
for computer skills like this with a screen reader and everything, you can do as much as somebody that's sighted can do lah.
Exactly.
How do you continue from there? Because from Paralympic now, right?
Yeah.
How was it like?
So back then I was unable to find a job for almost a year, and the inner voice of me told me that I can't stop there, and I'm a strong believer in change for the better. So I continue to improve myself, whether it's in resume writing skill, whether it's in communication skill, PR skills, whatever skill that can help me to find a job. So on my 13th interview, I was shortlisted to work in the call center. So that's where my life changed, and I worked hard for 2.5 years, promoted to be a team leader and a call center supervisor, and that's where I set a benchmark for my peers. I guess that is a journey of finding a job for a visually impaired person.
Oh, but being able to promote team lead and everything in 2 years, it's quite an achievement also, right? Then why did you decide to quit your job and you're Paralympic now?
I was on sabbatical leave, so I left my job to pursue my Paralympic dream. And in 2019 February, the Singapore National Paralympic Council informed me that both my pilot and I have earned a slot for the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics. And that is where the Paralympic dream originally began.
When do you start cycling, or like how do you come across Paralympic cycling?
I started cycling in 2017. So before that, I was introduced to parasports in 2015. Back then I was playing blind football, or call it football five-a-side, or some people call it football for the blind. Before that, I didn't know that people with visual impairment is able to play sports. So back then is when 2015 Singapore hosts the SEA Games and the ASEAN Paralympics. One of my friends told me that they are looking to form a blind football team. Asked me if I'm interested. So my curiosity bring me to try out the sport. It was a great experience for me, and football became like a stepping stone for my sporting journey. And in 2017, one of my friends asked me if I want to try out tandem cycling, because back then the president of the Paracycling Federation of Singapore is looking for visually impaired cyclists to join and form the team. And curiosity is not kill the cat, but thrill the cat for me to go and try it out. That's where how I became a paracyclist right now. Okay, back then when I was diagnosed with my eye condition, I lost my self-confidence. After the turning point, I decided to be hungry again, to try out new things. So together with my hunger and my if you never try, you never know attitude, I'm able to do all these things. So all these things, achievement, or should I say experience, gained that my self-confidence.
One last thing, do you have any piece of advice for people who are struggling through visual impairments?
I would say step out of your comfort zone and overcome your fear. Tell yourself, I may have lost my sight, but I have not yet lost my mind to fight.